Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, addresses the nation. Mr. President.
Fellow Nigerians, today we celebrate democracy and the enduring Nigerian spirit. For 27 unbroken years, since May 29, 1999, Nigerians have chosen their leaders through the ballot, witnessed peaceful transition of power, and resolved disagreement in courtrooms and legislative chambers, not through violence. We have experienced the longest stretch of civilian rule in our history. Our democracy is not perfect, but it is ours, and we must continue to defend and strengthen it. In the coming days, Ekiti and Osun states will hold elections. I urge INEC, security agencies, and all parties to ensure these polls are peaceful and credible. Democracy fails when citizens doubt the process. To our National Assembly, judiciary, the press, and civil society, you are the guardrails of our republic. Criticize me, disagree with me, but never stop believing in Nigeria. To our young people, Nigeria is your home and your future. Build here, code here, work here, and vote here. Every great nation was built by those who stayed to solve problems, but not by those who abandoned ship. To our armed forces, police, and intelligence services, Nigeria salutes your sacrifice. To our traditional rulers, faith leaders, and community heads, thank you for your support of peace and reconciliation. The government cannot do it alone. Today, we honor the resilience of Nigerians who refuse to surrender their faith in freedom and the courage of those who stood firm against intimidation. We pay tribute to patriots who endured persecution, imprisonment, exile, and even death so that future generations could enjoy democracy. I salute labor leaders, journalists, activists, students, women, professionals, political leaders, and soldiers, both those who passed and those still with us for their patriotic contributions. Though this year's mood is dampened by the abduction of our children in Yoyo and Borno, we remain hopeful for their safe return. Democracy without security is not solid enough. That is why this administration has chosen both kinetic and non-kinetic strategies to restore peace, declared a security emergency, and approved the recruitment of 50,000 new police officers and thousands of military recruits. Our 2026 budget commits 5.41 trillion, our largest ever, to defense and security. We have moved from training with our allies to precision targeting. In Arege, we degraded ISWAP and command centers. Terror-related deaths are down by 81% since 2015. Over 13,000 terrorists have been neutralized in the past year. But we also keep the door of surrender open. Over 124,000 fighters and dependents have laid down arms since 2023. Through Operation Safe Corridor, we turn our former enemies into citizens because every life saved is a victory for democracy. To bandits, kidnappers, and sponsors of terror, surrender or face the full force of the Nigerian state. These windows of surrender will not remain open forever. No mercy will be shown to those who trade in blood of Nigerians. At a time like this, let us not assign blames or point fingers. Crime has no ethnicity. We must stand united and be assured that the enemies of our nation shall soon be history. We will triumph over terror and continue to build a more prosperous nation. June 12 occupies a sacred place in our national memory. It represents more than an election. It is a defining chapter in our history. We remember Chief MKO Abiola, who won a pan-Nigerian mandate transcending ethnicity and religion. We remember Alhaja Kudirat Abiola. We also remember Chief Ganifa Emi, Chief Bola Ige, Chief Alfred Rwani, and Pa Abraham Adesoya, Chief Anthony Enahoro, Alhaji Balarabe Musa, Commodore Dan Suleiman, Beko Ransom Kuti, Franco Kori, Arthur Nwanko, Chima Obani, Shehu Musa Yadra, and the many other heroes and heroines of democracy whose sacrifices helped secure the freedom we enjoy today. As beneficiaries of their struggle, we have a duty to strengthen and deepen the democratic institutions for which they fought. The greatest tribute we can pay is to build a Nigeria where freedom is protected, justice is upheld, opportunity is expanded, and government is accountable. June 12, 1993, revealed the possibility of a true Nigerian nation. The heroes of June 12 secured political freedom. Our challenge is to secure economic freedom. Democracy must be felt in the quality of people's lives, in opportunities for youth, in prosperous farmers, successful entrepreneurs, and the dignity of our workers. The reforms we are undertaking were not chosen for ease, but for necessity. 3 years ago, our public finances were under severe strain. Investment was discouraged, and economic uncertainty threatened our future. We chose to act, embracing reforms to advance Nigerians' economic freedom. Since 2023, our reforms have restored stability and credibility to economic management. Federation revenues have risen, providing state and local governments with more resources for infrastructure, education, health care, and security. Fiscal transparency has improved. Leakage has been reduced, and public funds are better directed to national priorities. Investors' confidence has returned, with investment in agriculture, energy, manufacturing, technology, mining, transportation, and the creative industries growing. Domestic refinery capacity has increased, strengthening energy security and reducing our reliance on imported petroleum products. By 2023, when we came on board, the electricity sector was characterized by chronic generation shortfalls and unreliable gas supply and transmission infrastructure, so fragile that they could not evacuate available power. Distribution companies were burdened by massive losses and a metering deficit of over 4 million. Worst of all, the value chain was drowning in legacy debt. The result was a sector that generated less than 13,500 megawatts installed capacity, a sector that transmitted less than it generated, distributed less than it transmitted, and collected revenue far below what it needed to sustain itself. To address the problem besetting the sector, I signed the Electricity Act, which grants state authority to generate, transmit, and distribute power. The Presidential Power Sector Task Force is working hard to reduce the metering deficit. It has also been authorized to raise a 4 trillion bond to settle verified legacy debts. Rural Electrification Agency, supported by the World Bank and the African Development Bank, has deployed off-grid and mini-grid power to underserved communities, universities, markets, and hospitals. Electricity is a democratic dividend we owe every Nigerian. We intend to deliver it. Across the country, infrastructure projects are connecting producers to markets and creating opportunities for the enterprise and employment. The National Agricultural Development Fund is deploying 10,000 tractors over 5 years. Over 1,000 SME have been certified for export. Non-export grew by 21% last year. Yet, many Nigerians still face economic hardship. We remain focused on reducing inflation, expanding food production, creating jobs, improving living standards, rebuilding confidence in our economy, and creating conditions for sustainable prosperity. We are moving from uncertainty to stability. The next phase is about accelerating growth and ensuring the benefits are felt in every home, every community, and every region. We believe that democracy must be felt in the pocket, recognizing that democracy is undermined when people do not feel its impact. My administration has sought financial autonomy for our 774 local councils. A fundamental challenge to our nation's advancement has been ineffective local government administration. The insecurity we are addressing is partly due to the collapse of grassroots governance. The renewed hope agenda is about ensuring that all Nigerians benefit from governance. Every generation has a defining responsibility. The generation of our founding fathers secured independence. The generation of June 12 secured democracy. Our generation must secure prosperity. Let us move forward together, rejecting division, cynicism, and despair, embracing unity, hope, and confidence. Let us build a Nigeria united by a common purpose, strengthened by diversity, where justice is accessible, liberty is secure, and opportunity is abundant. Among the architects of modern democratic Nigeria, we honor General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua for his vision of national partnership. In recognition of his contributions, the federal government has approved the revitalization and renaming of the completed Institute of Petroleum Studies, Kaduna, as the General Musa Yar'Adua University of Geological Sciences and Engineering Technology. I'm also pleased to announce the national awards to the following Nigerians who suffered persecution, endured indignity, exile, incarceration, and at times solitary confinement, so that we have democracy today. Barrister Ayoka Lawani, Tunde Fagbele, Oladele Alake, Olatunji Bello, Louis Odion, Segun Babatope, Sam Omoseye, Sir Ademola Oshinubi, Bola Bolawole, Ladebonu Ola, Femi Kusa, Debo Adeniran, Chief Ayo Padokun, Chief Raf Obiora, Ose Osayanje, Barrister Osa Director, Professor Sylvester Odion Akai, Dr. Nwanko Posthumous, Dr. Osage Obayinwana, Joe Oke Odumake, Barrister Titus Mann, Joe Ibokwe, Richard Akeola, Ben Charles Obi, Posthumous, George Umba, Niran Malaolu, Major General Shola Williams, retired, Femi Aborishade, Jenkins Alumona, Gbemiga Ogunleye, Muyiwa Ade Kaye, Babajide Kolade Otitoju, Ike Okonta. We also recognize the soldiers, Democrats of the June 12 struggle, Major General M.A. Garba, Brigadier General Lawal Jafaru Isa, Colonel Umar Farouk Ahmed, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, Colonel Lawal Gwadabe, Brigadier Jonathan Ndan Temlong, Colonel Musa Shehu, Major General Chris Eze, Major General Aris Dama, Colonel Isa Jibrin, Major General Joseph Oshanokwe, Colonel Olusegun Oloruntoba, Olugbede of Gbede Kingdom, Lieutenant Colonel Api Kevas Bulus, Colonel J. Okai, Colonel Emmanuel Unduboeze, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Muazu, Brigadier Yaya Abubakar, the current Esunupe, who is already the holder of CFR title. The honored list will be released in the next few days. Fellow Nigerians, 27 years ago, many doubted democracy would survive here because of our diversity. Today, our diversity sustains our democracy. The road ahead is steep, but June 12 reminds us, Nigeria do not break. We bend, we bleed, but we do not break. Let us renew our covenant that the labors of our heroes past shall never be in vain, and that our government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this land. May God bless the heroes of our democracy. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. May God continue to bless us all. Happy Democracy Day.
Welcome to the Democracy Day broadcast here at Breakfast Central. So we'll start by saying Happy Democracy Day, Nigeria. This day was, of course, marked by the late President Muhammadu Buhari. Initially was the 29th of May, but was officially made the 12th of June to commemorate the life and, the victory of MKO Abiola, which, of course, was alluded to by the president in his speech. We did hear the 22-minute-long Democracy Day broadcast brought to you by President Bola Tinubu. So many things to unpack from the speech. We hope to do that over the course of the show today for the next 3 hours, or less than 3 hours, I would say. But whilst we're at it, you can head to YouTube. We're streaming live on YouTube, News Central TV Live, to drop your comments and let us know what your thoughts are about the speech. What stood out for you? What worked? What didn't work? Were you expecting something that the president should have said that he didn't say? And are you excited by some of the statements the president made? Please let us know on YouTube. My name is Olive Emodi, and you're welcome to Breakfast Central. Of course, I'm joined with my absolute dapper gentleman. Hello, Joe.
Thank you, Olive. Good morning, guys. Happy Democracy Day to you. And,
Happy Democracy Day to you. I can see you're wearing green.
Yes,
Proud
to
Nigeria.
celebrate Nigeria, proud of Nigeria.
Yeah. Happy Democracy Day.
Well,
Good morning, Nigerians, and good morning to everyone who's joining us. Either you're watching from Nigeria or outside of Nigeria. Oliver said it all, and the president's speech is one that definitely will resonate a lot in the minds of every single Nigerian. Did you finally get answers to some of the questions that have been asked, especially during that speech? There's a lot to unpack. We'll be taking a look at that speech, the president's speech, comments being made on insecurity, of course, national honors being given. Besides that, we've also seen the president talk about the reforms, electricity, which happens to be a major conversation that formed a lot of reactions, especially a few months back, regarding the president's next elections, okay, which would definitely come up January. And then we also would look at the big statement that was made there and then. Agriculture was mentioned, and I like some of the quotes, which I've also taken down, and I think it's something we'll look into. But don't just watch. Feel free to also be part of the conversation by simply dropping your comments. We're streaming live on YouTube as well, on other socials. You'll find us on X, on Facebook, and the likes. But I think from us here in the studios, it's only right for us to...
YouTube, but maybe do we start from YouTube?
It's only right. No, I think we'll
come to YouTube,
go to
but keep the comments coming on YouTube.
Yeah,
There's some comments that, please, I will not read because I still like my job. People don't want them to fire me. Some of the comments are
not suitable for broadcast.
No, not suitable for broadcast, not to be broadcast. But so many things were spoken about. I particularly liked when the president said, you know, criticize me, but do not stop believing in Nigeria. And that's one thing that, you know, it's a very sore topic. It's the list of the things spoken. But I'm starting out with that because one of the things that was said earlier. And we see that in Nigeria, there's a lot of over busybodiness that happens, for lack of a better word, when it comes to criticizing the president. And those who would argue that a lot of what Nigerians are facing, the average Nigerians, in terms of insecurity challenges, that all of these are done to embarrass the president. We've heard a number of them come to use that as a political argument, forgetting that the lives of Nigerians are at risk. He did mention about state statistics about insecurity. He said 81%, I think I wrote it down somewhere. He talked about terror-related deaths down by 81% since 2015.
It would be nice to see the source of that.
I would love to see that as well.
You should, because, I mean, from all the feelers and everything we're getting, it doesn't look like it's grounded in reality. The president also recognized the Oyo State kidnapped children and Borno incidents and said that they are hopeful for their safe return. And I think that's not inspiring enough. As commander-in-chief, you shouldn't use words like, I mean, hope is good, but hope is not a strategy. You should be affirmative. You should inspire confidence in the people and say, we are going to bring back those kids home.
Exactly.
That's how you speak.
Well, he didn't mention some of the things that have been done. For example, he mentioned 50,000 new police officers and thousands of military recruits. He said our 2026 budget commits 5.41 trillion naira, which is our largest ever, to defense and security. And then he's talked about us moving from training with our allies, that's the United States, France, and other European countries, to precision targeting. He said in ISWAP, in Borno State, that we degraded ISWAP's command center. And then he went on to mention that terror-related deaths are down by 81% since 2015. Then he goes on to say that over 13,000 terrorists have been neutralized in the past year, and said, but then we keep the door of surrender open. Then he goes on to speak about Operation Safe Corridor, which is one operation that a number of Nigerians have expressed mixed reactions to, because of the sheer reason that it opens the door for terrorists to return. The president and a lot of security agencies believe that fighting insecurity is not just by kinetic means, but there's the kinetic, the non-kinetic. It's just that when Nigerians hear non-kinetic, the first thing they think about is, you know, come and surrender. And then statements like, you know, the terrorists are our brothers come to mind. And it feels like what really is justice.
Or they're prodigal children.
Exactly, exactly, that particular one. And then the question becomes, what really is justice if the people who inflict the most pain are given an opportunity to reintegrate back into society?
What stood out for me is the statement, democracy fails when the people doubt the process. And I mean, the jury is out there. You could just do an opinion poll sampling of how much Nigerians trust the process, not just INEC. INEC is the big elephant in the room. But the judiciary, are you hopeful? Do you trust that the government would fulfill its responsibility, making life better for the ordinary Nigerians with, I mean, just everyday things that we see around. And the most basic of it is security, because if there's no life, there's no hope. Why do we even exist in the first place if you can't guarantee that sanctity of life? So, I mean, that's my biggest take of it. But you've all spoken well on the president. I think you've covered most of the areas he spoke about in this 22 minutes.
No, you haven't. You just touched. Let me touch on. Sorry, let me touch on the security.
Oh yes, there's still a lot.
Let's take them one by one. We're not done. For security, the president during his speech also gave a warning to bandits. I think that should make the headlines. I mean, he said he's warning, like a clarion call, a loud call, though it wasn't said in a loud voice. But he said bandits and kidnappers, they have a window. So this is time for them to lay down their weapons. If not, like he said there will be no mercy shown. And I think for many Nigerians, if you ask them, a lot of them would not want to listen to the first part where he says,
surrender,
you have a window, surrender. I think Nigerians are now coming to the second part which says there will be no mercy. And that's a bit understandable. But then again, insecurity is not handled in that manner. I mean, like he said, and like we've heard experts speak as well, when you give perpetrators the opportunity to turn around and lay down their arms, you expect them to do just that. But then again, the political will, that word has always been at the top, where everyone is asking, does the president, all the presidency, do they have the political will to ensure that they fight these the cases of insecurity to the end? But I think the president has made it clear this morning that, listen, we're going to give you a window. If you do not, then we might have to show no mercy. And like I said again, we'll wait to see what that no mercy would look like. Another thing I also took out there was the fact that the president highlighted that these cases of insecurity cannot be fought alone by the government. So calling on traditional rulers, calling on religious leaders, also looking at calling on fellow Nigerians, saying, listen, we have to unite to make this work. I think that's another angle that everyone will look into. But then again, the question would be, unite in what sense? How can the religious leaders, who, whether we like it or not, have also done a lot in the past few months? They've spoken, they've come out to say, listen, why don't we do this way? Why don't we do that?
Some have even gone on marches.
Exactly, yeah. And some have even lost their lives in between.
A lot
have lost
their lives.
And so on. We remember what happened in Benue State, remember what happened in Plateau. Remember how we even had some of the religious leaders here join us on the station, and they talked about that. So I'm seeing that speech made to either propel a different kind of approach. But like they say, this is the talk the president has made. Are they going to walk the talk?
There's another very important part that we cannot not talk about, which is, of course, related to electricity. That's because that was one of the pillars on which the president campaigned. Remember, President Bola Tinubu said if he doesn't, sort out Nigeria's electricity challenges, we should not vote him back into power. He says, to address the problems besetting the sector, I signed the Electricity Act, which grants states authority to generate, transmit, and distribute power. Then he talks about, 4 trillion naira bond being raised to settle legacy debts, and goes on to talk about some of the changes. Talks about what was existing before he came into office. He says by 2023, when we came on board, the electricity sector was characterized by chronic generation shortfalls, an unreliable gas supply, and transmission infrastructure so fragile that it could not evacuate available power. The question is, at the time when he came in 2023, this is what was existing. Currently, what is the difference between what was then and now? And I'm going to wrap this up.
He spoke on improved generation.
Can I wrap this up by saying, he says, electricity is a democratic dividend we owe every Nigerian. We intend to deliver it. It would be safe to say he has a few months to actually deliver it, because elections are in a few months. Presidential elections are around the corner. And like he said, if he doesn't restore power, Nigerians shouldn't vote him. So will this be another campaign rhetoric? The chances of this administration being able to provide electricity? Will this administration use work being done? Of course, Adelabu hasn't been scored properly. He hasn't scored highly, and he hasn't fared well with regards to the electricity.
There's a new sheriff in town, Mr. Tegbe.
Exactly. But Mr. Tegbe has said he did not promise to sort out all the problems.
But you have decent...
But that he promises that we will see some sort of improvement. The next few months, would it be enough to guarantee Nigerians significant significant, improvement such that Nigerians would then decide that, okay, the renewed hope agenda fared well, and as a result, we want to vote them into power again for a repeat. Okay.
Well, we do hope that it's going to be different. But like we said, the speech was characterized with a whole lot. So we've talked about security. The president talked about electricity, not forgetting to the economy as well. And then national honors were also mentioned and so on. But we'll go on a quick break.
Yeah, but before we go, just to explain to our audience, for those who had, we did announce that we're going to have some of our guests joining us for breakfast. Wake-up conversations. Like you see, there were no wake-up conversations as a result of President Bola Tinubu's speech, so we did communicate to these people that we will have to reschedule for a later date. And who knows, maybe this time we'd also open to the virtual audience. But thank you so much for signifying and indicating your interest to be with us. We never take that for granted. Now let's share with you what the top stories are.
This morning on Breakfast Central, we'll look at Nigeria's politics. 27 years after democracy, the president just spoke, and we'll look at that. Youth political participation, a promise or progress? This is an angle to look into as Nigeria marks another Democracy Day. We'll look at journalism as well, the impact they've had as Nigeria marks its Democracy Day. Not forgetting to the role of judiciary. 27 years of democracy and still counting. And the front pages of the newspapers, hopefully we can glance through to see what the papers are saying today. But stay with us. Breakfast Central continues shortly. Thanks for staying with us here on our special broadcast on Breakfast Central. Well, as Nigeria marks Democracy Day, the conversation is no longer just about the survival of democracy, but about who gets to shape it. In the president's speech this morning, you remember and recall that he did say that out of the 774 local government areas, grassroots politics plays an important role in developing democracy. And that's why the youth definitely needs to be involved. Well, increasingly, you could say visibility in political movements, election campaigns, and civic advocacy continues to remain at the front burner. Yet questions remain about whether they are truly influencing power or merely participating around it. Nearly 3 decades after the June 12 struggle helped redefine Nigeria's democratic journey, many argue that the next test of the country's democracy may well be its ability to translate youth energy into leadership and, of course, governance.
Well, here's what you should know. More than 70% of Nigeria's population is under the age of 30, making young people the country's largest demographic group. Now, INEC data from the 2023 general election showed that voters aged 18 to 34 accounted for over 37 million registered voters and nearly 40% of the national voter register. The Not Too Young to Run Act, signed into law in 2018, reduced age requirements for elective offices. But challenges such as money politics, party structures, and godfatherism continue to limit youth participation. Today, we're joined by a leader in that constituency, a young person. He is Honorable Tomiwa Babalola, House of Representatives aspirant for Ifelodun Federal Constituency under the Accord Party. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Democracy Day.
I wish you the same. Good morning, Benga.
Morning.
All right, so we started off by giving context as to the population that young people occupy and the influence that we ought to wield, but it feels that what is on paper is a far cry from what ought to be. What would you say is causing that difference? I mean, in our national anthem, you hear things like the labors, or our former national anthem, the labors of our heroes past. But the heroes past are still the heroes present, and it looks like they're holding on to be the heroes future. Why are young people not as involved as they should be? What is causing that gap?
I think one of the major issues is unemployment and underemployment. Official statistics say that young people between 18 and 35, 34 are about unemployed about 5% and 9%, but underemployment is looking around 35%. And as you know, for you to perform specific duties beyond going to the polls on election day, there's a cost associated with that. And when persons are more focused, young persons are more focused on, making ends meet, building a career, actualizing their dreams, then they're possibly less interested in the more rigorous parts of politics.
All right.
Now let's talk about your personal journey into politics. It's almost like a song. In Nigeria, they say the murky waters of politics, because you've cut your teeth in the private sector. And for people, especially a young person to go into politics, it's very risky. What is the driving force and the passion behind your decision to participate in active politics and also seek elective office?
Thank you so much. Politics was never the starting point for me. It was all about service. So prior to my entrance into the polity, I've served on a humanitarian level. I'm also an employer of skilled labor. I also dedicate my time to mentor young people, and I also lend my own resources to assist people in improving their welfare, both home and abroad. So I then realized that for me to make more of a widespread impact, scale, as it were, and to make impacts that is more precise, that being in governance in politics would give me the context and also the capacity to improve those levels.
Okay, I'd like us to focus on the president's speech. A lot has been said. I think starting off from the youth angle, the president did mention that about 774 local governments and so on, that grassroots politics is responsible for why we have struggles with democracy. I don't know what your take is regarding Nigeria's grassroots politics, especially now that it's bedeviled by godfatherism. People must know someone to climb. How will this impact on Nigeria's democracy in the future? And how do you think the youth would play a very strong pivotal role in ensuring that growth?
Thank you so much. I'd like to focus on the polity that I'm a part of, which is Osun State. Osun State has one of the higher levels of youth participation in politics, both elected office and in appointments, as well as partisan and non-partisan. I think that one of the major things that we need to focus on is the fact that young people are stakeholders. So beyond, not all of them will be able to run, but they are stakeholders in this polity, and we need to continue to encourage them to participate actively. Encouragement in the sense that things like godfatherism, things like who do you know, who are you connected to, how much do you have in your bank account, are things that are or can be set aside. And we should look at integrity, hard work, and intention. Of course, I'd like us to reference the fact that our democracy is very young. We're in a fourth republic, right? If we look at the US, which you typically reference, 1776 is when they had their first republic. So their democracy is over 300 years old. So we also need to understand that these things, these developments, these improvements happen over time. And I believe that we're getting there and we'll continue to get there.
Okay, I mean, I wish, hearing you say it, it sounds like what it ought to be. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. And I understand when you say that we're still a very young democracy. The worry is that how long will we, because that's an argument that we hear over time, like how long will we continue to bank on the fact that we're a young democracy, where it feels, and this goes back to the first question that I asked earlier when I said that, why do we have the older people still holding on to power? Why is it that we're not seeing a lot of younger people involved in politics? People see politics as dirty. So what advantage can young people muster? How can we look out for each other? How can we support each other? There's also the argument, I mean, I spoke to someone in power, I can't mention the person's name, but to be honest, a lot of them believe that when you give a young person an opportunity, they would even go there and they would do worse than the older people. So there's just this narratives that float around amongst the older people and even amongst some younger people. So what needs to change for younger people to be at the forefront of politics, of elections, of governance, of being a part of the process?
Thank you, Olive. I think that the only way to cure the apathy is by understanding that whether we like it or not, governance happens, politics happens, and we have a stake in it. One of the major resources that we have as Nigerians are the young people. And as you know, there's a lot of excellence in the cadre of youthful people that we have. So the way we're applying ourselves to other areas, such as the economy, the creative arts and things of that nature, we also need to put that focus into the polity. However, I understand that there's a bit of discouragement because the immediate results, or the results are typically not immediate compared to other walks of life. We do need to realize that despite the fact that we don't get those results immediately and initially, they do come. And sometimes they come up indirectly. Sometimes, like the heroes past that our president mentioned, sometimes you're sacrificing this for people that are coming after you. You're sacrificing this for people that may be in other walks of life. You're maybe even making these sacrifices for your parents, your cousins, your elderly ones. So that's my take on that.
Now, Honourable Babalola, you've been on the ground, you've done grassroots consultations, you're aspiring to become a member of the House of Reps for Ifelodun Federal Constituency. From what you've seen so far and, you know, the real work on the ground, what would you say are the biggest needs of the population in Ifelodun Federal Constituency? And I'm sure there's quite a number of young people there. What are the immediate concerns? What do they want? And when they speak to politicians like you, what do they say?
That's a great question. The way I approach the younger persons, and I apologize, in Ife Federal Constituency, is that I don't go in as a politician. I live in the constituency. So I am one of the citizens in the constituency. Luckily for us, the administration of Governor Ademola, or rather Senator Ademola Jackson Adeleke, has addressed a lot of the burgeoning issues. The lack of quality schools, which is one of his day one agenda plans, is to make sure that both public and both primary and secondary schools are up to scratch in terms of facilities, but also that they're well funded and they have teachers that their welfare is taken care of. Beyond that, the young people also want places to work. So those that have finished training, whether skill training or tertiary education, they want places to work. And because the economy of Osun State has improved over time, we're seeing about 80% year-over-year improvement in IGR. They now have the opportunities to work in the States compared to maybe a couple years ago where they have to go and seek those opportunities elsewhere. And I think the third part is they want to participate, but they also want to be heard and included. And as I mentioned earlier, our administration is one that continues to encourage young people to participate. We're not in the Pyrrhic sort of nature of things passing in a short time, but actual long term, to where these people's opinions are being taken into account today, tomorrow, and for the future.
Okay. I mean, I want us to come back right now. We just heard the president's speech. I definitely would ask you your thoughts about the speech, but also to get a sense of if you believe that that speech was inspiring enough, and if that's what Nigerians needed at the moment. Were there things that you feel that the president should have mentioned that were not mentioned? Were there things that you're like, okay, he mentioned in the speech? And I'm asking that because the Democracy Day is a very symbolic day for Nigerians. Right. Yes, it represents maybe the last time we had unarguably the best election in Nigeria, the 12th of June in this sense. You know, it was with MKO's election. Since then, we haven't had elections that have been generally acknowledged to be free, fair, credible, and seen by all, or majority in that sense. So let's get your thoughts about the speech in general, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you. The speech was rather comprehensive. I liked that the president addressed the pressing issues. I think in the past, maybe in past administrations, those issues have been swept under the carpet. We're all aware that insecurity is a very deep issue. He addressed that. How we feel about the 81% reduction in deaths, that's more subjective. As you mentioned earlier, we have to look at the statistics behind that. I like the fact that he mentioned that a democracy without security is not truly a democracy. If you know the meaning of democracy, it comes from the Latin words demos and kratos, right? Which is power to the people. And the people don't have power if they don't feel safe. I like the fact that they mentioned the increase in the budgets, the largest amount of budget going towards security, the 50,000 policemen, the thousands of armed personnel that be included. What are additional things I would have liked to see? Probably just more poignant notes on the state of the country, maybe more precise addressing of specific issues that have occurred over the past couple of weeks. He did, however, reference the kidnappings unfortunate kidnappings in Borno and Oyo states. And then beyond that, I also like the fact that he mentioned, power generation, which is, of course, a pressing issue, which also is directly linked to unemployment, underemployment, and security at large. So those are my own opinions. I know that the Nigerians across the world and at home will share varying opinions, but those are my thoughts on that.
I mean,
as a young Nigerian, I mean, people often say this, that when you go to the House of Reps, you will be one of 360 representatives. That how much impact can you really make as one individual in Parliament? I also want to ask you that if there's any single reform that you could tell Mr. President to enact now that would be beneficial to young people overall, what would it be to? So those two questions. That's
a great question. I'll answer the second question first. I think if there was any one reform, we need additional sort of introduction of funds into the sectors that young people work in the most. If the underemployment that I mentioned means that we have at least 35% of young people that are working in sectors below their capacity or working in roles below their capacity.
Examples of such.
For example, someone that graduates maybe from engineering, but then is working in a hospitality role. Not that hospitality is bad, but if he's trained to be an engineer, he's certified to be an engineer, then he should be able to work in that line.
And you shouldn't be in hospitality because you can't find a job. Yeah.
More or less. And then going back to the 360 representatives and one, I think let's be granular, right? In the past election in Osun State, Senator Ademola Adeleke Jackson defeated the former governor, now Minister Oyetola, by 24,000 votes, right? There's 30 plus local governments. So each vote, 100 votes at each local government led to the defeat and the success of the incumbent governor. So each one person that decided not to vote, decided not to register, led to the success or defeat. So beyond that, if we go back to representation, it's the fact that myself and persons across the board are looking to take the issues that are local to the federal house. And that's what politics is. When in, I guess, around 508 BC, when the Athenians started, or the Clisthean emperor started bringing in voting and elections, the intention was that the issues that people are facing are represented in the highest places. And that's why I believe that despite the fact that it's one person per one specific district or one senator in two constituencies, that we're able to take those issues that we experience, that our people are experiencing, to the fore, and then they get addressed and worked on in the legislative house or by the executive.
But you'll be working with competing interests. There are 360 other interests, so there's a possibility of being drowned in that arena.
Of course, there's a possibility, but that's why democracy is meant to produce the best of us. So it's the best of us going, I won't say against, but working in tandem and finding a congruence to where those 360 districts can then be addressed. It might not happen all at the same time. It might not happen in the same way or at the same volume, but the hope is that
you're working towards progress.
We're working towards progress. And fortunately for us, democracy is the best alternative.
All right. I mean, when you talk about democracy being the best alternative, one of the key factors to determining the quality of any country's democracy is their elections. Our elections are governed by the body called INEC. INEC has not been in the news lately for the best of reasons. There's so much, the positivity that you're emitting in this conversation, a lot of young Nigerians don't have that for INEC. First of all, the INEC chairman, how's his name?
Professor
Joash Amupiton had been criticized or accused of aligning with the ruling party, the APC. There were documents. INEC has denounced that, but it seems that a vast majority of, or a vast population does not seem to believe that. There's also the criticism of INEC regarding how recently the SA to the Minister of the FCT shared private documents and private data of a citizen in a bid to shame him. thereby revealing that it was back-end information that only INEC should have access to, which then brought about people questioning the integrity of INEC and asking, can we trust INEC? And then there's also the issues of those who have been complaining that their voter cards have not been found. They seem to have been deregistered for some reason. There are different allegations that have been thrown at INEC in the past few weeks. Without democracy, without INEC, for example, we can't guarantee the quality of our democracy. What's your faith in INEC? Do you have trust in INEC? And what would you say to the Nigerians who say to themselves, you know what, 2027 is already a done deal. We don't believe in the elections because we don't believe in INEC. They call INEC an extension of the APC. That is what we hear in the streets, of social media.
That's a great question, Olive. Very convoluted question, and I'll do my best to answer it. One of the things that I still mull over is how we can get INEC to be independent, truly, because the I is independence. Because of the way our government is structured, the executive arm typically appoints the leaders of INEC, and then there's still one way or the other being funded by the executive arm. So it's, again, I said best alternative. I'm still, this is the one question that I don't yet have the answer to, that how do we make INEC independent? Because if we put it under the legislature, do we get the same results? If we put it under the judiciary, do they have the powers to even make sure that they're able to function? I think universal adult suffrage is what we're all going for. We want to ensure that the greatest amount of, or the largest amount of people are able to vote regardless of creed, sex, race, religion, and things of that nature. The jury is still out on whether we have that to the best of our abilities. I personally think we have a ways to go. Not to give a damning statement, but I think we have a ways to go. However, if we look at the so-called most free and fair election in 1983, what was the
93? Yeah.
What 93. Was 93 rather? What was the participation in that election in terms of the amount of people that registered and voted compared to our most recent general election? I think it stands about 29 million people voted in our last general election compared to 91 million people that registered, which is a far cry. And that means that at least tens of millions of people didn't even register, and they're even more apathetic. So we still have a ways to go. Do I have faith in INEC to ensure that the will of the people is carried out? Me, myself personally, yes, to an extent. How efficient are they is subjective, and I'm hopeful in this case that we see better results in 2027. I do, however, believe that we are in a better place than we were when we started off in 1999.
Better place in terms of? In
terms of the amount of people, or the percentage of people that are participating, and also the amount of people that are registering and going to vote.
So let's quickly go to our correspondent who is live. While today marks a Democracy Day, we also hear that there's a national protest. Civil rights organizations, name them, everyone is gathered. And we do have our reporter who is live on ground in Lagos. Ni Omoni joins us this morning. Nationwide protest, coalition of civil society organizations gathering. We hear trade unions, youth groups, communities, and of course, concerned Nigerians. The reason? They say no democracy without security. So, Ni, can you give us an update where you are and what is happening? Today is Democracy Day, by the way.
Okay, so I'm currently at Ikeja on the bridge right now, and it's going to be a gathering of a whole lot of people from CSOs to trade unions to Labour Congress. It promises to have a lot of people who are disgruntled about the current situation of Nigeria gather here and, of course, express their mind. At a day when Nigeria is supposed to reflect on its own democratic journey, this is what you have. While some are actually rested at home for the holidays, people are here agitating for a better Nigeria. But before I come here to another group of people that are agitating for the betterment of Nigeria, I have with me here a team from Team Nigeria for Change. And I just want to know exactly what their mission is by being here today, gathering here at Ikeja Under Bridge. Sir, let's start with your name, sir.
Good morning. My name is Bumi Oluyadi, member Team Nigeria for Change.
Okay. At a time when we know today is Democracy Day, and at a time when others are at home, probably resting, you have decided to occupy the streets of Lagos. To what end?
Well, we are here to celebrate that very good day when all Nigerians came together in 1993 and voted for MKO Abiola. That day we were given mandate, and that was the beginning of democracy. Although they never allowed it to work, but eventually it came to pass. Today is about 33 years now that that day was truncated. So today we are grateful to God that we are still alive. We still have hope that Nigeria is going to be better. It's getting better under Bola Tinubu. So we are here to support this government. That Nigeria has been in intensive care for a long time, but we are gradually coming up of the woods. I will believe that Nigeria will be better.
As an individual now, not as a party member, do you think you are enjoying the dividend of democracy in Nigeria?
Well, I and you are enjoying.
How, sir?
You can see that we are free. We are standing here. We are not molested. We are still free. So
is that not supposed to be like a basic right?
It's a basic right because the government are still working. They are not working. We would have been here by this time. Everything would have scattered. But we thank God that we are alive. I will believe Nigeria. We don't have any other country than Nigeria. Look at what happened in South Africa. People that went outside Nigeria, right, they were sent back to Nigeria. So we don't have any country than Nigeria. We want peace in Nigeria, and we hope that with this government have been retuning the country, we hope it's going to get better. So we should support the government so it can get better.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. You've heard from Team Nigeria representative. They want to support Nigeria. But I'd like to get the agitation of another set of people here so that we can know what their own views are as regards these protests.
We know their plan. Yes. Do not give in to their plan. Yes, sir. No provocation. Yes, sir. No distraction. Yes. But we will never relinquish this space over our dead body. Yes. We will never relinquish this space over our dead body, comrades. Yes. No distraction. I have told the police whether today will end peacefully or not is dependent on them.
So wait, please quickly talk to us.
They organized this counter protest, but we will never relinquish our space. Let us, Nigerian people, let the songs go on.
Sorry, when you said they organized the counter protest, what is the situation on ground now? When you said they organized this counter protest, what's the situation?
What the Commissioner of Police, the new one in Lagos State, has clearly done is to organize a counter protest of APC members to take over the space that the Nigerian people have always utilized every year on June 12th for Democracy Day. We wrote a letter to the IGP signed by no other person than Comrade Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria himself, informing the Nigerian police of this protest, not just in Lagos, but across the country. So the police cannot say they do not know we are coming out today. When I got here some 20 minutes ago, I met the police providing protection to these people. It was only when you got to engage the police to say that they had no rights to allow these people to take over the space of Nigerian people that they began, to provide very stupid explanation. But we have told them we are not going to listen to any explanation. This is the space of the Nigerian people. All those who support kidnapping, all those who support insecurity, they are free to express themselves, but they should not infringe on the space of the Nigerian people. Ikeja under bridge is a space that Nigerian people have utilized year in, year out, and we will never depart from here. We are here, we are not going anywhere.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to give you the scenario and see what is going on behind me. If you can see, there are some putting on green and white tees. The End Bad Governance supporters are saying these are supporters of the current ruling government, and the End Bad Governance protesters, which usually, according to them, occupy this space, are the ones with this very huge banner here. And they're laying some claims that there is support from the police to suppress them from using the space. And another counter protest was organized here as against their wish, and even after their call. You can see in front of me, Soweto is having a conversation with one of the police representatives to make sure that everything is settled amicably. We don't know how this is going to end, but for now, it's quite a tense situation.
Don't engage in
We are going to hold you responsible. If anything, we are not running anybody. We are not running for anybody. This is Lagos. It's not a crime to be a Nigerian. Is it a crime to be a Nigerian? It's not a crime. So we are not running for anybody. This is Nigeria. So this is our right. To protest is our right. So we are not running for anybody.
Well, you've heard it. The situation is still quite dicey. The police is doing its best to calm the situation. But as you can see behind me, there seems to be like two set of groups here currently. The faction supporting the ruling party. We can't confirm that, but of course, from the comments they've made, we can see that those are the comments they've made supporting the current government, and they're here to march in support of the government, while the End Bad Governance protesters are also here claiming that this has been their rally point for the people for a very long time, and they must have their rights to converge. This is the situation on ground. Joe.
Well, thank you so much, Nee. We look forward to speak with you again. I'm sure you would have more updates for us as the protest continues. We're also told that the same protest is being held in Rivers State. Biola Festus will join us shortly as we'll take a look at what's happening in Rivers State as well, and possibly other states across the Federation. But as we wrap things up here this morning, youth restiveness, we've also seen democracy leading to a lot of protest. Everyone coming up and saying we need to speak up. What's your take on youths coming out to speak up, especially now that we're looking at democracy?
Let me employ the phrase Vox Populi, Vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. The people are allowed and should come out to express their views in whatever forum or whatever public place that they choose to. It's ironic that the visual that we just saw from Nee, one group is coming out to protest bad governance, and the other group is coming to assumedly counter that process. They both have a right to protest because their feelings are determined by their experiences. And maybe they have similar experiences, maybe they have different motivations. But I believe that for us, the young people, we have to come out, we have to participate, not just in elections, not just in campaigns, but we have to lend our voices across board to ensure that they're heard and our opinions are also taken into consideration when laws are being made, when policies are being passed, and when the executive arm is putting specific policies into place.
Right. Thank you very much for putting that rightly. Young people do have a right to lend their voice. I hope that protest goes on peacefully and that, you know, there's no conflict between both factions.
Law enforcement is there.
And law enforcement as well, because we've come to a point where it's like you must take permission from the police. I'm glad the police is there, and I hope that everything is handled. But you can tell that there's a dissatisfaction, you know, in the face of on the part of a lot of Nigerians regarding how the economy is being run, especially with the case of insecurity at hand. We want to say thank you for joining us, Honorable Tomoa Babalola. Wish you all the best in your journey. And we hope that you will do young people proud.
I will do my possible best.
Thank you so much. And best wishes.
Yes, all the best wishes. We're still analyzing Nigeria we're looking at how far we've come in terms of our Democracy Day, celebrating 27 years, what that means, and also another opportunity to reflect.
Uninterrupted democratic experience.
Exactly. And also X-raying democracy under the watch of President Bola Tinubu. We'll go on a very quick break, and when we come back, the conversations continue, so please stay with us. Today, the 12th of June, is a day we pause as a nation to reflect, celebrate, and to critically examine Nigeria's democratic journey as a nation. It has been 27 years since Nigeria returned to civilian rule in 1999, and the metamorphosis of our political space since then has been nothing short of interesting. From the annulled June 12, 1993 election that birthed the symbol of democratic struggle to the eventual transition in 1999, Nigeria's democratic journey has been defined by resilience, sacrifice, and many would say an unyielding spirit of the Nigerian people.
Democracy Day is not just a date on the calendar, it's a reminder of the price paid for freedom, the voices that refuse to be silenced, and the institution that's grown stronger through trials and triumphs. Over the past 27 years, Nigeria's political space has undergone profound transformation. From fragile beginnings, democratic institutions have matured with the legislature, judiciary, and civil society playing more assertive roles.
Well, let's tell you that parties have metamorphosed from grassroots movements into powerful structures while corruption, exclusionary politics and economic struggles persist. Nigeria's uninterrupted democratic rule remains a milestone proof of the people's determination to uphold democratic values. As we look at 27 years of uninterrupted democracy, we ask, how far have we come? What lessons must we carry forward? And how can Nigeria's political metamorphosis translate into real transformation for the people? Now, these are some of the questions we'll be looking at. Well, joining us for this conversation on this Democracy Day special, we have one and only, of course, you could say, a member, a politician, and of course, one who is interested in democracy because he always speaks about it regularly. We have Mr. Akin Bash, who joins us live in the studio. Thank you so much. And spotted on green, not bad. It seems that...
Very patriotic green, just like my tie.
Stop rubbing it.
That's interesting. Your studio is equally green. So I think that's part of the patriotic zeal that all of us must carry as Nigerians.
But unfortunately, this patriotic zeal that you speak about, not everyone carries that patriotic zeal in this moment. Judging by, I don't know if you saw the protest happening in Ikeja on the bridge.
And the state of the nation.
Exactly.
But we have another
Let's also introduce yes. We also have Mr. Jide Ojo who's joining us virtually. Good morning, Mr. Jide Ojo.
It's the happy June 12th.
Mr. Jide Ojo, are you virtually carrying the patriotic zeal? And what's your assessment of our democratic experience, 27 years uninterrupted, but they still call it a nascent democracy?
Thanks for having me. Happy Democracy Day once again. It's an interesting time to be alive. As a witness to June 12th democratic struggle, I look back 33 years or thereabouts, and I'm having mixed feelings. I was an undergraduate student at the University of Lagos at that time. I recall that I'm part of the foot soldiers that protested against the annulment on the streets of Ikorodu Road, Yaba axis, before the school was shut down for 6 months. I recall that as at that time, I was already a contributor to a radio program on OGBC FM Maybach 2084. That's the State Broadcasting Commission. There is a OGBC FM Maybach 2084 every Friday. I used to write to express my dissatisfaction with bad governance. And you know, at that time, it was a military junta at the end of affairs, even though all that democratic institutions are already in place. As of June 20, 1993, we only had military president, he calls himself, General Ibrahim Babangida, at the end of affairs. So it was a form of diarchy at that time. And I recall that part of the struggles for the emancipation of June 12, or validation of June 12, led to the resting of that particular program, because many people were writing in to lambast and lampoon the military junta of that time. And so we paid our own price. I recall many newspapers were proscribed, from National Concord to the Punch newspaper to the Guardian newspaper. In fact, the sad thing about Guardian at that time was that it was even touched. The Rutam House was touched by arsonists, and the paper was proscribed. The news, magazines were likewise proscribed, led to the formation of Radio Kudirat and, of course, the guerrilla journalism of that time. And many people died. Many were sent to prison. Many went on to exile. People like Wole Soyinka, people like Kole Ajibade was jailed for life. He was a journalist of international repute. He was jailed for life. So many people pay different prices. But looking back at time, I would say, well, we are not where we ought to be more than 30 years after. But we thank God we still have a nation called Nigeria. We have not disintegrated. We are soldiering on, even though our baby step successes cannot be said to be at the pace that an average citizen would think we should be. So it's still a feeling of deja vu. Nothing much has changed. We are more or less marking time motion without movement. Our dividends of democracy has been long in coming and is yet to be delivered. I looked at the president's speech, I read through every paragraph of that speech, and while he was trying to stir and inspire hopes in Nigerians, many Nigerians are not going to agree with him, particularly on sections that says that 81% of terrorism-induced deaths has been achieved, but 81% reduction in terrorism deaths has been achieved since 2015. I do not agree that that is a very factual statement. And also don't see the reason why someone like Colonel Sabo Dasuki, former National Security Advisor, should be on the list of honoree for June 12th.
Yes.
Because this is a man that still has questions to answer on the disbursement of $2.1 billion under the Goodluck Jonathan administration when he served as National Security Advisor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jideojo. I mean, we have so much to x-ray from the president's speech. Let's come back to the studio now. Mr. Bash is here. You've heard. I think we'll take it from where he took it from. 81%. The president did make it clear that so far so good since 2015, terror-related deaths has actually been brought down by 81%. I don't know what your take is. Security experts are rearing their heads now, asking questions. Where's the statistics? How does it prove a point?
Anyway, before I go into that, you raise an issue, at the early stage concerning patriotism.
Absolutely.
A patriotic Nigerian, number one, is a Nigerian. It's not until you have changed your nationality that you will not have a commitment to Nigeria. That people are protesting nowadays because they are patriotic, because they believe that things can get better. So every Nigerian is a patriotic Nigeria. If you're not a patriotic Nigeria, perhaps you want to leave Nigeria and go into another country. Now, on the issue of statistics, it depends on what statistics do you have to work with. It also depends on who is saying what. I want to give it to Mr. President that he knows what he's saying. And to those who are equally disagreeing, they equally know what they are talking about. Do you get it? Because even if by Mr. President's record we have achieved 90%, the moment there are still issues, those especially recent kidnapping and all that, which has really generated a lot of, disappointment, a lot of emotions, families that are not happy and all that. At this point in time, there's nothing Mr. President will say that people will want to see it, coming from that very objective viewpoint. You understand? But by and large, for me, I think we must not give up. 27 years of democracy, along the line, fine, we are progressing.
There's a new generation, democratic natives. They were born into this experience and they've never experienced any other government. So how do you convince them? But they read the history books. They always tell them, democracy is the best form of government. But a lot of them are disillusioned with the current state of the economy. A lot of them are roaming the streets, little employment opportunities. Is this the ideal democracy? And how do you convince them that, this democracy is still the best if there's little benefits to what their country has done for them?
Yeah, I think we need to clarify this. If democracy is not the best, what is the option?
This young democratic natives are looking at countries like Burkina Faso.
Anybody can choose an appellation. Every one of us here, we have always been... But are we... Just 1 minute, just 1 minute. We have always been a youth at one point or the other. So those youths we are currently having, democratic, what do you call them?
Natives. The
point is this. Within the space, these people you are referring to, we found our own levels at some point. So it is expected that any other person must look for a way of finding his own level. Is it that there are no jobs? Or, I'm sorry, I don't want to use the language of, was it President Buhari then, calling some of these just lazy people? How many people are learning skilled program? Instead of learning arts and all that, a lot of them believe in quick money. They look for other quick ways of getting things.
They're learning from example.
What example?
For example, the fact that a number of people have made politics their lifelong ambition when they're
They don't
in the
have a
house, they
second
retire
address.
from the executive and they go to the legislature and they're there for decades and they refuse to relinquish power. Our heroes past.
How does that affect the youth you're talking about?
Because at the end of the day, when you ask them to account for what they have done whilst representing the people, there's really nothing to show for it. Politics is not like it's a power grab, it's a money grab. It's seen as the quickest way to make money. It's why people like African China sang songs that, showed how it felt like there was a class system when it came to, justice and being able to earn. And it felt like those at the helm of affairs were easier, like they were able to make quick money. So there's a template that...
Can I just ask you a question?
Please go ahead.
What is the percentage of politicians in over 200 million Nigerians that you think that, the few you are talking about, has now become the issue? What's the percentage?
So it's not about the politicians being a few percentage.
Yeah.
It is a few that controls the majority.
Yeah.
The majority are the young people. The young people typically should have the power. The office of the citizen typically should be the highest office of the land. But what is on ground is a far cry from what it ought to be.
Then beyond, when we say the youths are disgruntled, we're not saying they're asking for political power. They're just asking for an enabling environment.
Too.
And they're asking for an enabling environment where businesses can thrive when you don't bring... you're not taxing them every other day. You provide the basics, electricity, water, just infrastructure, typical infrastructure. And that is looking very aspirational for a lot of them. And I disagree with the fact that you say some of them, some of them might be lazy, but it doesn't paint the general picture.
I'm not saying it paints the general picture. What I'm saying is this. At some point, we were youths. Okay. And we found our level. I am a politician. I have my business that I'm doing. So I didn't come into politics, to come and earn a living. I have been working. I've grown over time before I came into politics. So we should not portray politics as that thing that the youth must look up to because they want to make money. Can
I respond to that?
Yes, please.
I'm going to have Mr. Jide Ojo, but I'm just going to read a comment on YouTube. Someone says, this generation don't suffer. Those who had free education, meal, and have decided to steal the benefits of this generation are blaming this generation. When the head is rotten, the body is. We'll go on the break. When we come back, we'll have Mr. Jide Ojo as well respond to the statements made here in the studio. Right, we're still looking at Nigeria's democracy and how we are faring, and as well as this current administration. We're still joined by our guests. Mr. Jide Ojo, you're joining us virtually. You've heard the statements that have been made here in the studio. I'd like you to speak to, the role that the young people have played and maybe respond to some of the things that our guest in the studio has said.
The life wire of this administration, like the previous one anyway, because we have the 60% youth population aged between 18 and 35. And that is the pillar of any economy. Small and medium enterprises are needful to liberate that population, because where are the jobs? Sincerely, where are the jobs? The disillusionment that young people suffer today is not so much because they are lazy or inactive or they are not willing to work, but the enabling environment is not there. Imagine you want to borrow to fund a micro enterprise and you are asked for 25% interest rate on loan.
And collateral.
The 200 billion that this administration promised 3 years ago. I didn't hear Mr. President speaking to how many beneficiaries there are who have gotten loan as 9% interest rate. I was hoping that he would build on his previous speeches which he gave, so that he can give us an update. But today, he spoke in different direction. Even though he still spoke about that the June 12th has given us political freedom, he is now giving us economic freedom. But Nigerians are not seeing that economic freedom yet. We are not unmindful of the fact that he took over the reins of power at a very inauspicious time when about 30 trillion was used by the immediate past administration under what they call ways and means. Ways and means by, according to economists, is printing money that is not backed up by production. I think between 27 and 30 trillion naira was printed by Muhammadu Buhari administration, which central bank was just enabling him to do without any production backing. And that is the first challenge this administration faced, and which is perhaps why the macroeconomic policies that he initiated, like the bridging of the exchange rate as well as the removal of subsidy, may be a thing that is inescapable, because you can't continue to run an economy on deficit and think that that economy will do well. But having said that, a lot of people are still asking the question, 27 years down the line, what has been our benefit? Yes, I listened to someone on the street of Ikeja when your interviewer asked him about what the dividends of democracy. He said, oh, yeah, the fact that you can criticize government and then you get away with it, that after all, you are here, nobody is molesting you. I agree that civil liberties is one of the hallmarks of democracy, but beyond and above civil liberties, people must have decent living. What is the statistics on poverty? What is the statistics on unemployment? What's the statistics on insecurity? What's the statistics on inflation? What is the statistics on rising cost of living? These are the things that make Nigerians, not just young people, even old people, to feel disillusion that this democracy hasn't worked for them. Not many of us want to criticize government, not many people who want to even grant media interview, but they are willing and ready and looking forward to the next meal. They want to have food on their table. They want to be able to pay their bills without having to go and borrow. So many people have been turned to corporate beggars and street beggars.
All right, Mr. Jojo, if you can pause on that thought for a bit, we'll come back to you. We want to hear, we have some speeches being made at the protest ground. Let's take this and we'll come back to you.
To make our people happy. 2 weeks ago, we sent a letter to the government of Nigeria to recover the sum of $120.5 billion. If this money is recovered, we have no business taking loans from anywhere in the world. As we are gathered here, or yesterday, the Senate of the Federal Republic was in turmoil because the NNPC has not been able to explain what happened to the sum of 210 trillion naira. A committee of the Senate has summoned the former GMD of NNPC, Mr. Mile Kyari, but the full House, headed by Godswill Akpabio, did say yesterday that the committee has no power to summon the big man. And the Senate apologized to him for embarrassing him. On our own part, we have written a letter to the Senate that we want a copy of the report where it is stated that 210 trillion naira cannot be explained. Again, if this money is recovered, that will be enough to fix our comatose hospitals, our roads that have been turned into death traps, and provide jobs for young people. Therefore, this protest is also against the worsening insecurity in our country. We are calling on the government as a matter of urgency to rescue the children that are in custody. Just imagine the primary school pupils, some of them just barely 2-3 years old, have been at the mercy of elements for the past weeks. Come rain, come sunshine, those kids are suffering. No medical attention, no food for them. And so for us as Nigerians, all of us are in custody, one way or the other. And we demand the immediate release of those children and their teachers. As you are well aware, a teacher has been beheaded in order to compel the government to move speedily to have those children released. Great Nigerians. Great Nigerians. Great. We also want to thank you for coming out today to mark the June 12th anniversary.
Yes, sir.
As you are well aware, there is no democracy in Nigeria.
Yes, sir.
What we have is civil rule.
Yes, sir.
Civilian administration.
Yes, sir.
The struggle for democracy must continue. So we thank you very much and for the media for coming. Great Nigerians.
I don't know if you have one or two comments. I don't know if you have one or two comments about the others.
I mean, there's not much to be said. There's not much to be said. Can I go ahead? I mean, there's not much to be said that has not already been said. Apart from the insane corruption and gross mismanagement of our resources, I think everybody can see the worsening insecurity. It's unbearable now. So many people being kidnapped, being killed daily. And it's like every day now there's a new one. There's Zamfara, there's Kebbi, there's Katsina, there's Kaduna, there's Plateau, the most recent in Oyo. And up until now, these kids still are not home yet. They haven't been able to reunite with their families. And on the flip side, in the same Oyo state, the former minister, Adelabu's sister, was kidnapped along with her twin children. Barely 72 hours after, they found a way to free them. They don't care about us. They don't care about ordinary people. But it must be known that no Nigerian life is more important than the other. Every single Nigerian life matters. And every single person must be cared for and protected at all costs. We're here to say, put an end to these kidnappings, put an end to these killings. Schools are still open. Every single day, students are still being kidnapped. What is going on? This has to stop, and this must stop immediately.
The election date has been changed, and a lot of people are almost giving up now, noticing that nothing can happen in Nigeria again. Nigeria can be better. But some will argue that Nigeria is better. Do you think this current ruling party will win again for the next election?
I think I can't predict who's winning or who is not winning. I think from the general mood, I think we can see how people are feeling. I think we can see the discontent, the dissatisfaction with the way that they've managed their affairs. They've had ample time to show any willingness, any political will to make a difference. But it's clear that they do not want to. And we are going to go to the ballots to show how we feel. I personally believe in the democratic system. I believe in the democratic process. And I'm ready on that day to exercise my franchise. Thank you. Thank you.
There we have it, the protest happening at Ikeja on the bridge. We've seen the SAN, Leonard SAN, Femi Falana, as well as his son, Folarin Falana, popularly known as Fals, the bad guy, out there joining Nigerians to protest. Mr. Jide Ojo, I want you to react to some of the statements, pick up from where you left off, and then react to some of the statements you've heard them say. We saw what they said regarding the current state of insecurity, the Senate talking about the elections, as well as the APC. I will have our guests in studio react to the statement about the APC, but let's have your thoughts first.
I want to commend the learned Sikh. He has stayed the course over decades. In my days at University of Lagos, he was a regular visitor to many of our events. Someone I know personally, even at the level of civil society activities. It's been a bastion of hope. It's been a role model to many young Nigerians, and I'm not surprised that his son falls has followed in his step. The learned Sikh FF is very much on point. And he's been very critical of this administration, mostly on the issue of anti-corruption fights. Incidentally, the president was silent on his anti-corruption credentials in his speech today. He never mentioned anything about the fight against corruption. It's very sad. Look at the humongous amount we are talking about, 210 trillion, millions of dollars, and yet we keep borrowing. We keep borrowing to fund our budget. And let me quickly, before I forget, let me come to the issue of insecurity. The president gave a figure that in this year's budget, over 5 trillion has been earmarked for defense and security. Can we have a breakdown of how much of that sum has been released to the Ministry of Defense and the Nigerian Police and other security agencies? Because what we have found is that there is a world of difference between what you budget and what is eventually released. In fact, from the 2025 budget, it was learned that less than 20% of the capital vote for 2025 was released to the security agencies. Less than 20. Somebody yesterday was saying 19%. And if that is the scenario that we are still carrying forward, it's not doing us any good saying that 5 trillion was budgeted for security and defense when we cannot establish whether that 5 trillion has been released to the authorities that are going to use the money. This is already June. This is half of the year. If that money is still not released to the Ministry of Defense, to the Ministry of Police Affairs, to the relevant agencies that are supposed to do the needed procurement, that are supposed to provide the welfare of these our security agencies, that are supposed to build institutions like police barracks, military barracks, procure arms and ammunition, then of what significance, of what benefit is that 5 trillion? Okay. So there's a nexus, there's a connection between corruption, political and economic corruption, and insecurity. Because when the money, and that's why I raised the issue about the $2.1 million that Colonel Sambo Dasuki, under his watch as National Security Advisor, could not provide explanation, concrete explanation on how that money was spent. We are told by investigative reports and the committee that was set up by former President Muhammadu Buhari, that much of that $2.1 million at that time was misappropriated. Half of that money was allegedly spent on the re-election bid of former President Goodluck Jonathan. The other half was misappropriated, and that is why even the then Minister of Defense, Chief of Defense Staff, Alex Badi, was answering corruption charges as at the time he was assassinated. The Chief of Air Staff was also arraigned. We don't know what has become of those arraignments in court for corruption allegations in the mismanagement of $2.1 million way back in 2014, 2015. So until when we are able to deal with the conundrum of corruption, we will not move forward. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ajidejo. Let's go back to the studio. Let's have you react to some of the stories. I mean, there's a lot to react to. I can't imagine where you want to start from. We've seen the protests. We've seen the clarity in statements made by the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, his son, and then, of course, our guest joining us virtually, Mr. Ajidejo, highlighting something else. Let me start from the under the bridge thing. Right. I concur with Femi Falana. There's no doubt about that, because the points he made are good points. For example, he said, if the government is able to recover the money that has been that has to do with NNPC, of course, a lot can be done through that. And I mean, we are also, witnesses that the National Assembly
has made some efforts, you understand, by saying that they should summon the man. Of course, I also heard that the Senate President eventually said that the committee has no right to do that, and that the committee has apologized. Those ones are issues of protocol and processes in the National Assembly. Whether a committee can summon or it is National Assembly as, you know, an entity that can do that. I think that is, you know. But what for me is important is that efforts are being made to ensure that that money is accounted for. Generally, the times are not good times. There's no doubt about that one. But we cannot also say that those who are in charge are sleeping. There's no way anybody will be heartless enough not to be taking steps to ensure that the level of insecurity is reduced. Our children who are in captivity are equally released. Efforts definitely are going on.
Efforts, you say, but
yes.
I mean, that's the barest minimum. Efforts shouldn't take up to a month, especially when it comes to children. It should be a national emergency. I don't think any country
You wait. Since the children have been taken to captivity, on a daily basis, on a regular basis, you understand, we hear that state government, federal government, they are doing some things. But don't forget, the guy was making reference to Adilabu's sister, who was kidnapped, kept in a house inside the town, compared to our children who are in captivity somewhere else where we cannot even identify. The processes cannot be the same. Okay, recently we were told that some...
But why are they not preventive?
That's another thing you're talking about. Yeah, it's another thing. What I'm trying to say is that recently we learned that about 300 something, you know, persons who are...
360.
In the Northeast, yeah.
In the Northeast have been released.
Yes.
Definitely. Some processes must have gone into that. You understand? Of course, we need to move fast. Okay, I was listening to a radio commentary where this guy, what do you call him, Sunday Igboho, said he was ready to lead a team to go and, you know, get the children released. And he was told, if you make any attempt, they'll kill those children.
Okay. So now...
You understand? So the processes will take time. And
how much more time?
I don't know. You yourself cannot even say.
Okay.
But what we are saying is that we need to balance it. Those kids must not be killed in captivity. And the government must not hesitate, you understand, to continue a process that will lead to their release. When they are released, that's our own joy. So. Okay,
just to mention, now you said, my colleague had asked the question, he said that's another question. Do you agree that the government hasn't also been proactive in fighting insecurity?
Insecurity? I don't know what you mean by being proactive.
So they're more reactive in preventing this sort of kidnappings from happening.
Listen, kidnapping is not a regular case of insecurity. So when you're talking about being proactive, in the first place, do we have our agencies in place who are in charge of security? We do. But when a kidnap occurs, none of us can even determine where kidnapping is going to take place. It comes, and when it comes, the only thing you need to do is to react and see how you want to, you know, address it.
Unfortunately, we have about 4 more guests who are standing outside and ready to come in to bear their minds. I just want to get your final conversation, no long talk. How would you rate the president's speech this morning over 10?
As far as I'm concerned, it's a good speech. What I discovered, which you also know, is that every Nigerian wants his or her view to be in the speech.
No, let's leave that. But how would you rate it over 10?
For me, I would give him 7.
7.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. Mr. Judeojo, finally, how would you rate the speech, just to wrap things up? Because we have some comments as well. We don't have time anymore.
For me, I think the speech is on general, you know, overview. I would just rate it average. It's not inspiring enough. It's not high on statistics and data. The president was talking about him having declared state of emergency on security, and that 50,000 policemen should be recruited, as well as several thousand.
So over 10, how many?
But he didn't tell us how many have been recruited so far.
Okay.
How many have been deployed? Okay. And how much of that 5 trillion security budget has been released whether they have all been released or they are still being released in tranches. So a lot of statistics needs to go. How has it improved the living standard of people? How many people have been pulled out of poverty?
Yes.
How many people have
because of our time, so over 10, how would you rate it? Me.
You said?
Over 10.
How would you rate it?
I said 5.
5
Average.
7. All right. Thank you very much for joining us
Thank you
this
so much.
morning. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
33 years ago, Nigeria held what many describes as its freest and fairest presidential election. Chief MKO Abiola's victory at that election was annulled by the military government of Ibrahim Babangida, and that decision ignited a pro-democratic movement that helped shape the country's fourth republic. News Central's Victor Mbadike looks at how the events of June 12, 1993 continue to influence Nigeria's democracy today.
On June 12, 1993, Nigerians voted in what many still call the freest and fairest election in the nation's history.
We don't want Babangida again, and we want MKO.
However, the hope that that election embodied was brutally crushed. This is the story of a stolen mandate.
Abiola came with that slogan, with the message that I want to end your poverty. And Nigerians also thought that the military has compounded their problems. They wanted to end military rule. They have seen a man who said he wants to say farewell to poverty. So they all stood behind him. So General Kunibire was shocked and was embarrassed that what sort of thing is this?
It was a presidential contest between Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola of the Social Democratic Party SDP and Bashir Tofa of the National Republican Convention NRC. After years of military rule under General Ibrahim Babangida, millions of Nigerians turned out peacefully. Unofficial results showed Abiola winning convincingly with over 8.3 million votes, about 58%, defeating Tofa across ethnic, religious, and regional lines in a rare display of national unity.
That even in the barracks, the results were coming up, suggesting that MKO Abiola was leading. Even in Kano, where his opponent came from, the results were coming up, suggesting that MKO Abiola has won. Despite the fact that MKO Abiola is a well-known practicing Muslim, his vice president was also a Muslim, it does not appeal to sentiment of Nigerians. To them, we have a president and we have a vice president.
But on June 23, 1993, the military government annulled the result, citing vague irregularities. The announcement sparked nationwide outrage, protests, and a prolonged democratic struggle.
We are being told that the judiciary behaves so badly that I, Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, should be penalized for his conduct. It is incredible.
His most recent action of declaring himself the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria incited the public to insurrection and attempting to topple the government by force with a view to installing himself as president.
Put the democratically elected president.
Abiola was later arrested after declaring himself president. He died in detention in 1998. The annulment delayed civilian rule and deepened distrust in the system.
The greatest glory is that after 1999, despite all obstacles, despite all setbacks, we still have the so-called oligarchy, the so-called brain box of the military to interfere in our national affairs.
In 2018, the late President Muhammadu Buhari declared June 12 as Democracy Day in honor of Abiola and the June 12 struggle.
On behalf of the federal government, I tender the nation's apology to the family of late MKO Abiola, who got the highest vote, and to those that lost their loved ones in the course of June 12 struggle.
Years later, General Babangida admitted that MKO Abiola won the 1993 election.
That accident of history is most regrettable. The nation is entitled to expect my impression of regret. As the leader of the military administration, I accept full responsibility for all decisions taken under my watch.
The ghost of June 12 still reminds Nigerians of what could have been a truly united mandate for democracy. Yet, as the country reflects on the sacrifices that followed its annulment, the question that still hangs in the air is, has democracy in Nigeria truly delivered on the promises and aspirations that inspired that struggle? In Lagos for News Central, Victor Mbadike.
All right, very detailed reports there by Victor Mbadike. Well, let's move on now to another story this time as we still look at Democracy Day, June 12, and the president's speech. But we'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll delve into it. Stay with us. Thanks so much for staying with us. Before we go straight into the conversation, let's join our correspondent who is in Ibadan this morning. Bernard Akede joins us. Good morning, Bernard. Thanks for joining us this morning. In Lagos, the protest is indeed heating up. We do hear that it's the same in Rivers State. Can you tell us what's happening in Ibadan this morning?
All right, thank you for having me, Joe. And as I say, happy Democracy Day to you all in the studio. Well, in Ibadan, just like we have in Lagos, I want to believe it's the Take It Back movement that's, basically that's spearheading this protest. But we hear that there may be more than one protest in Ibadan. There's also a group called Coalition Against Insecurity. Coalitions Against Insecurity. They state that they will be having their own protest around the University of Ibadan. They will have a procession from there, to for some kilometers. But here we are at Challenge Roundabout, and this is Take It Back movement having their own. I'm going to speak to Juwon Sanwo-Olu, who is pretty much spearheading the protest this morning. Good morning, Juwon.
Good morning.
All right,
my name is Juwon Sanwo-Olu.
Juwon Sanwo-Olu, I beg your pardon. So, Juwon, this is Take It Back movement here in Ibadan. This is your own version of the protest. We see that it has started in Lagos, and then there are other protests, pockets of protests in certain places. Bring us up to speed. What is the reason for this protest? Today is Democracy Day. What is the group agitating for? What are they asking for? Why are we here?
Yes, to start with, the protest is taking place nationwide. And our comrades are mobilizing from all parts of the country, from Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, as far away in Jigawa, Kano, Yobe. In the southeast, we have people organizing in Enugu, Abia, Anambra states, Edo states, Delta states. So in fact, in some states, there are multiple locations. And this was a product of a nationwide directive that came from a meeting from within our organization where we discussed and resolved that the state of insecurity in this country cannot continue to persist without conscious resistance, which is why you saw that last week we started the protest last week, which also was we started here in Ibadan, which eventually escalated nationwide to Ibadan, to Abeokuta, to Abuja, to Kwara State, to Ekiti, and different parts of the country, and some of which are, and a lot of whom are repeating the same actions today. Currently, our members are leading protests even in Ogbomoso, which is the epicenter of the current abduction. But Oyo State is not the only state where the kidnappers are having a free pass. In Kwara State, there are people kidnapped in Kwara State as I speak to you. They are protesting. There are people kidnapped in Ekiti State as I speak to you. They are protesting. There are people that have been kidnapped across different parts of the north. They are also protesting. Yesterday, while your news media was organizing a town hall meeting, part of what struck my mind is that what exactly is stopping the bandits from entering that town hall to abduct everybody who is participating in that town hall. Because after all, these same bandits have invaded sacred places like churches to kidnap people.
All right, so I want to quickly ask, what is the, you know, the mode, what is this particular protest going to look like? What's the mode of this protest here in Ibadan? What are we expecting? Where are we going, or where are you going? What will be your activities for today?
So, well, what is happening today is a continuation of what the protest we started last week. Except for the fact that today is Democracy Day, and we are using today as an opportunity to further amplify the fact that Nigeria is not a democracy until every citizen is free. And when there's insecurity, we are not free. When there's poverty, we are not free. When there's hunger, we are not free. So we're going to be marching across the streets of Ibadan to further mobilize people, to conscientize people, and to amplify our resolution, our conviction that it is either the President Tinubu government and ongoing insecurity in the country or resign. That is our position. As a matter of fact, we are convinced that if we are going by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the purpose of government shall be the security and the welfare of the people. In this area, the government of Tinubu has failed, and we are convinced that there is no reason it should remain in office, and it should immediately resign.
Thank you so much. Joe, if you can still hear me, that's Juwon Sanyaolu stating that the purpose of this particular protest largely is surrounded around insecurity, or the state of insecurity in the country. And they are asking that the government at hand right now, the government in power right now, either beefs up security, you know, improves the security situation in the country, or they step aside.
Bernard Akede for that, and we'll join other correspondents across different states and cities in Nigeria. Olive?
All right, and now it's time for us to get into the proper conversation. Joining us to have the conversation this morning about Nigeria's democracy, to, you know, share with us what it was, where we are, what the expectation is for where we are going to, is Nigeria's former Minister of Youth and Sports, who is also an ADC chieftain, Solomon Dalong. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Warm welcome to you.
Can we say Happy Democracy Day to you? How do you feel about Democracy Day? And maybe take us back to what it was like in 1993, because we know that you're an active part of the struggle.
Well, I still have a problem with calling it Happy Democracy Day. I think I consider it as June 12th Day, because there is nothing democratic about what we are talking today, because democracy has values, has traditions. And then so when these values are not in place, you don't pretend to be celebrating it. But we celebrate today as a day where we had one of the best and free and fairest elections in Nigeria. I participated. I was polling agent I was an agent of the Social Democratic Party on this day when the election took place. And of course, Nigerians were full of hope that democracy was going to be restored by the military after holding the country hostage for so many years. The spirit of Nigerians was very high, just for the elections to be concluded, and then there was an incongruous announcement from a piece of paper that originated from no office and wasn't signed. Because the document that annulled June 12th, that was announced by the military, was a piece of paper from no office and was not signed. That was how the country was plunged into chaos. There was an eruption of protests across the country, especially the southern part of Nigeria. And in the north, it was not too popular. So some of us from Jos migrated immediately into Lagos to take strategic positions to mount pressure for the annulment of June 12th. And we spent so many weeks living in Lagos, under the bridges, mounting the resistance. The military was fighting back with helicopters, smoking from up, the police, the soldiers. But the spirit of resistance was very, very high. Nigerians resisted it, and that led to when they opened up this negotiation with the political elites, who now later betrayed the struggle, and then it moves into the next level, which we sustain it until ultimately the military was flushed out in 1999.
Wow.
Okay, that's quite a detailed story, and thank you for taking us through that journey and sharing what it was from you, like your perspective and your experience. But we also have a member of the NUJ joining us this morning. We have Achike Chude. Thank you very much for joining us this morning from our studios. You heard what Comrade Dalong has said in terms of our Democracy Day. He doesn't consider it Happy Democracy Day, and he's detailed his experience from 1993 as well. Do you consider it a Happy Democracy Day, and what are your thoughts about how we fared in terms of our democracy?
Well, if we are looking at it from the perspective of not having to answer to military overlords, then I would say, probably I would say yes, it's a good thing. But then don't also forget that democracy is about the people. The basic definition of democracy as a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Therefore, it presupposes that the people will be the determinants of the validity of the democratic process, how the people respond to the democratic process, how happy they are with the democratic process. All of these things are important. And how do you determine the happiness of a people? I think the Constitution, Nigerian Constitution, has provided a template for that when it talks about the responsibility of government to provide for the welfare and the security of the Nigerian people. So from that perspective, we now look at the welfare of the Nigerian people, and then we look at the security of the Nigerian people. Where are we today in terms of the standard of living for Nigerians? And then in terms of security, obviously the security situation is known to everybody, it's known globally, it's known to all Nigerians. And Nigerians constantly are living in fear. So that would tell you that at the level of security, there's been a failure. And the failure doesn't have to do with this government, generally in particular. And because this insecurity has lasted, at least starting from the Boko Haram days, the origin of Boko Haram and all that, and then the entrance into the arena of bandits, the unknown gunmen, and the headsmen and all that. So this has lasted for about 15 years. And then before even that period, we had the militancy in the Niger Delta and the increase of the Niger Delta. So for the past 29 years, I think a large portion of it has been one that has witnessed a lot of social, crisis, turmoil, insecurity, and the rest. Then at the economic level, I think it's not just for me. You go to the market, you look at the prices of basic foodstuff, you look at the inflationary trend in the country, you look at cost of transportation, you look at the fact that in most offices, not just in the public sector, in private sector, that most Nigerians now, in most offices, it's acceptable for somebody or a worker not to come to the office 2 days or 3 days in a week. And then there is no furor that is being raised because there's an understanding that the cost of transportation has gone up astronomically. Of course, as a result of the economic decisions that were taken by the government, especially this government, there are justifications that the government has given actually from the government perspective that it found itself in a situation where something just had to be done with regards to subsidy, with regards to certain microeconomic factors, with regards to the multiple exchange rates that we had, where people were making money, could become millionaires or billionaires in a day. According to the former governor of the central bank, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, who criticized what was going on. So we've had the exchange rate, we had government intervention in that sector. We've had government intervention in the energy sector, especially with regards to the pump price of fuel and all that. And then government has given justification. But what has been the outcome of governance? Energy, electricity were promised, Nigerians were promised, uninterrupted, energy or consistent, power supply. Prices have gone up, tariffs have gone up, but the quality of services have not gone up. And so when you look at it and what Nigerians have to go through, the fact that their parents have to struggle to put their children through school, and then in the midst of it, the government, good of the government increased the minimum wage. But we have seen what the minimum wage is, that even today as it is, that when workers were earning about 18,000, the 18,000 then had more value than the 70,000 that is being, paid to workers today. So you look at all of these things. You look at erosion of decent, at least some level of relative decency in the life of the Nigerian, and then you cannot say that Nigerians really have much to celebrate about. On the streets of this country, from Kano, Kaduna, Onitsha, Ogbomosho, wherever, you see people with long faces. Everybody has a story to tell. And these stories have been stories of frustration, stories of unexpected frustration and unexpected unfulfilled desires and demands and all that. So it's not been a good story. I can tell you from 1999 till date, there have been some positives. I mean, if you look at it, that at a time, we are beginning in terms of our democratization process, we began to move in a particular direction. Now we got to the height of that where people began to say, even some of us in civil society, some in the media, now kept on saying, especially after the Anambra election, and then the Ekiti election.
Okay, Mr. Chikechude, just to interject at this point, permit me to jump in so we can unpack a lot in the course of our conversation. His general assessment is that there's more to be expected from our democratic experience. I'd like to come back to our guest in the studio, Honorable DeLong. But this morning, Mr. President did speak to Nigerians in his Democracy Day speech, and let's highlight what he said with regards to security, and then I'll come back with my questions.
Though this year's mood is dampened by the abduction of our children in Yoyo and Bonu, we remain hopeful for their safe return. Democracy without security is not solid enough. That is why this administration has chosen both kinetic and non-kinetic strategies to restore peace, declared a security emergency, and approved the recruitment of 50,000 new police officers and thousands of military recruits. Our 2026 budget commits 5.41 trillion, our largest ever, to defense and security. We have moved from training with our allies to precision targeting. In Arege, we degraded ISWAP and command centers. Terror-related deaths are down by 81% since 2015. Over 13,000 terrorists have been neutralized in the past year. But we also keep the door of surrender open. Over 124,000 fighters and dependents have laid down arms since 2023. Through Operation Safe Corridor, we turn our former enemies into citizens because every life saved is a victory for democracy. To bandits, kidnappers, and sponsors of terror, surrender or face the full force of the Nigerian state. These windows of surrender will not remain open forever. No mercy will be.
You heard Mr. President there. I mean, securing the lives of the citizens is the primary responsibility of any government. But according to the Global Terrorism Index, this year alone, Nigeria has witnessed huge amounts of deaths, and we're the fourth most terrorized country in the world. But Mr. President says the budget is the largest. We're working in tandem with partners. They've neutralized a lot of terrorists. He also talked about Operation Safe Corridor. What's your assessment of this administration's handling of security issues in the country?
The president has just inducted himself and his government with this speech. And it seems he's speaking from a different world, not even in Nigeria. Because all those things he said do not reflect a president who understands the challenges Nigerians are facing and is ready to deal with it. He's telling us stories of repentant terrorists. Instead of admitting that they are not repentant terrorists, they are recycled terrorists. Because these same repentant terrorists that they spend so much state resources in pretending to be rehabilitating them, we have stories that they have been recycled back into the forest with better strategies, better information, and attacking more aggressively. And that is why ISWAP, which he claimed to have been liquidated, have launched unprecedented attacks from the Borno axis. We have reports of brigade commanders being killed. We have reports of an abducted brigade commander that is unaccounted for today. If the president is now telling us that, oh, we have the highest budget, great. Why are we not having the highest protection? Where has the budget gone to? The president is telling us stories from the blues. Recruiting more boots, yes, is necessary. But is that the most important military strategy needed now to deal with?
There's also talks about fastening the legislative process so that we can kickstart state policing.
Well, first, you see, the government needs to deploy technology to track where these people are in the forest, deal with it. In fact, 32 or 33 days now, the Oyo students are still in captivity. There is no effort to rescue them except rhetorics and stories. And the president today is telling us to be hopeful, meaning that the commander-in-chief, who has his finger on the nuclear button, is now prayerful. So what becomes of an average Nigerian on the street? The president's speech is rhetorical. He appears not to be too committed to dealing with this issue. There is no political will from this statement. And I think Nigerians are into greater challenges from this speech. I think he was going to come out with a command, just like we know commander-in-chiefs do. Give command to the military. Give them timeline to deal with it. Then tell us how this budget will be translated into acquisition of weapons, technology to deal with this. But they have equipment to track me if I criticize them and pick me anywhere. But they don't have equipment to track these criminals. They don't have equipment to even track and rescue our students. Children no more go to school. Now, there's no school in Nigeria because small children, if you ask them to go to school, they'll say, oh, if I go to school, I will be kidnapped. That is the psychology. So I think Mr. President needs to do more than this story he has told us. He should come out and tell us how he will translate this 5 trillion into action, not only recruitment, acquisition of equipment. What has happened to the Americans? Well, they have been here. And since their arrival, the terrorists have been more emboldened.
But he did mention in that speech that it's because of the partnership that they've killed a number of terrorists, and ISWAP number 2 was also killed as a result of the partnership.
Sometimes when they talk about killing of these terrorists, I get confused. Because the more they kill the terrorists, the more they become in number and the more aggressive they become. If you look at the way the terrorists have been operating with impunity, how they are now going on kidnapping. Now they kidnap with a lot of courage. They approach their target and kidnap. They don't even fear anything. So I think the Nigerian state has failed. Let's not be very, very honest.
But when you say the state has failed, I mean, this insecurity problem didn't start overnight. You were part of the same APC government in the last administration. And current supporters of Mr. President will argue that if your principal, late President Muhammad Buhari, had solved the insecurity issue decisively, that there won't be any insecurity for the present administration to inherit. So you'll also have a share of the blame. How do you respond to that, sir?
A lazy workman blames his tools when you aspire to take responsibilities, you know the problems you are going to deal with. That's when you aspire to go and deal with solve the problems. You see, President Paul Kagame became the president of Rwanda when there was no state, no government, nothing. There was only genocide. It took him 6 months to put structure of government, deal with the issues, transform the country into one of the best economies in the world. Anybody complaining should tell us why is he not complaining about the huge budgets he has been making. Was Buhari budgeting trillions on security? Certainly not. So why are you still telling us Buhari, who has gone to see God and we are saying may his soul rest in peace? What have you done differently from Buhari? This should be the issues, not the blame game. I think this government is hanging on to this issue of inheriting. Let me tell you the history of this problem we're talking about. Insecurity started in Nigeria in 2001. My community, the Taro community, came under attack. Bandits took over our community for 3 years. There was no farming. There was no going to anywhere before Obasanjo decided to declare state of emergency and then roll out tanks and dealt with the situation. So if we limit insecurity to Buhari, it will be very, very unfair. In 2010, there were massive crises in the entire plateau, rocking the metropolis. Many were killed, many were destroyed. So this has been with us since 2000 when Kaduna came on board, because the whole crisis started in Kaduna, migrated to Jos, remained in Jos for a very long time, and has been with us till today, then spread all over.
What about Borno State?
Borno was after Plateau. It was from Plateau that we had Boko Haram now in 2004. They started in 2004, but they became aggressive in 2009, 2010, and they have been there till today. So then banditry in 2012 in Zamfara, then became notorious in 2017. Later, when we were in council, we challenged the president himself, and the Minister of Defense went to the bush, took the battle to them. They subsided, and then after 2019, they resumed in full-fledged, and here we are. So the lack of political will to deal with insecurity is the #1 challenge. And the president should remember Section 14, subsection 2B of the Constitution. The primary responsibility of government is the protection of life and the general well-being of the citizens. Once government fails to do this, then there is nothing called government.
Okay, another part of this insecurity challenge was, that the president referenced was Operation Safe Corridor. And I want to bring in Mr. Chikechude into the conversation now to talk to us about your thoughts regarding Operation Safe Corridor. The president did mention about how, there is a timeline for them to surrender, as this timeline will not be open forever, but he's talked about how many citizens have been reintegrated back into the society. So can we get your thoughts on Operation Safe Corridor?
Speech, I would give him maybe 8/10. But if I were to relate the speech to the situation on ground, I will not give him that high. I will not score him that high. It's a speech that is meant to inspire people and the rest. But don't also forget that people have to relate the speech to the world that they are living in, and it becomes problematic when you look at that. I think. Well, they have their figures. The government has its figures. They have their statistics. So I'm not in a position to say that the government is not very accurate, but except that there seems to be some bit of contradiction, because if the president is saying that about 124,000, bandits or criminal elements, have surrendered, then it's problematic, because the thought, of a lot of people, even experts in the field all this while, is that you do not have that number of people involved in acts of terrorism in the country. If we had that number, I think we'd be in greater trouble today. Obviously, it would mean that we have a ratio in terms of the number of people that make up the number of population in the Nigerian army. is it the armed forces or so, about 300 and something thousand, maybe about 350 thereabout. So it will mean that for every 3 Nigerian army soldiers, you have 1 terrorist. That would be a very frightening situation for Nigeria. So I do not think that that figure is very accurate. The other time, the American Congress, one of their committee sittings on Nigeria and then the crisis of violence in the country, I said that there are about 30,000, insurgents or terrorists or bandits in the country, about 30,000. That might be nearer to it, So that gave a bit of hope, because if we have 30,000 and then we have over 300,000 Nigerian soldiers apart from the police, then you can tell yourself that in terms of sheer number that we actually, outnumber them, man to man. And so what we need is, change of tactics, the use of technology that people keep on talking about and all that. And of course, like a lot of Nigerians are skeptical about people who repent. And repentance is a thing of the mind. It's not something that you don't see repentance in people's faces, And that's why it is said that, that it is by their fruits that you shall know them. Again, that is why we have also been told that people who actually repented went back to the bush. Because what is the basis of the repentance? Why are they even repenting in the very first place? It means that when they repent, you integrate them back into the society, and then they will now, be able to earn some economic sustenance ability for them to earn money to carry out successive, social living and all that. And then, but the way we see it in terms of joblessness and unemployment in this country, when the terrorists repent, what kind of life do you introduce them to? There's nothing on ground. And, don't also forget that the root cause, if you're looking at the root cause of this crisis of insecurity in the country, you cannot go too far away from poverty. Poverty is a major driving force of what is going on. So if you take these terrorists away, who you say they are repentant, and then, of course, there is that about their repentance, their state of repentance, then what do you give them in exchange for them to lay down their gun?
That's a very vital
so these are fundamental issues, and that's why. And then again, the president in his speech, yes. But first of all, let me even also talk about the heroic sacrifices of our security people. A lot of them are laying down their lives. Let me make this point, please.
Let's just pay the bill. We have a bill to pay. Let's just go on a quick break, and then yes, we'll be right back. All right, Democracy Day, no doubt. The studio is filled to the brim and we need to move very quickly. Unfortunately, time is not our friend. But Mr. Achude, we want to wrap up now. We have just 10 seconds for you. I'm sorry, because of our time. But we just want to get your thoughts, your final thoughts on the national honors very quickly. We did see some persons who many felt were not supposed to be honored. But what's your take very quickly, please?
People who are supposed to be there, obviously Obayawana, Chimobane, we know some of them. There are those that are also not there that should also have been there. I saw Bamidele Turu, Abiodun Aremu. These are people that we all know the kind of the roles that they played in the struggle for June 12th. So it's a mixed bag, just like you said. Obviously, a lot of people feel that there are those who should not be there, perhaps political patronage or not. But again, some of them also actually deserve to be there. The last thing I wanted to say again is about the heroic sacrifice of our soldiers and our armed forces. A lot of them laid down their lives. Families have lost their loved ones because they were out there in the bushes, in the forest, in the dark of night, trying to protect us while we sleep. And so in as much as sometimes we're also critical about what the military does or does not do, we should remember that they have had to spill blood to keep some of us safe. And we must say kudos to them at this particular point in time.
Before he spoke and before we went on the break, he said he was going to score the speech 8 over 10. We don't know what you're going to score the president's speech. However, while you're scoring that, what's your take on the national honors as well?
Well, I will score the president's speech 3 over 10. And for the national honor, well, the president has reasons to honor those he honors. But there are those that made the list that deserve the honor because they sacrificed for the struggle of democracy in Nigeria. And to our servicemen, the military, we stand with you in your sacrifice to protect and defend this country. I call on the federal government to equip the military effectively with modern equipment so that they can deal with the contemporary challenges of terrorism. And to Nigerians, let us not lose hope in this country. We don't have any other country except Nigeria. We are Nigerians, and Nigeria will be great.
I mean, at least you and the president align on one thing, because that's one of the things he said in his speech in terms of, he said, criticize me all you can, but do not lose hope and belief in Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We all believe in that, but doing the work is the problem.
All right. And thank you, Mr. Chike Chude, for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. We'll go on a very quick break. The conversations about Democracy Day still continue and will resume when we return from this break.
It's still Democracy Day. We've highlighted issues around the speech made by the #1 citizen, President Bola Tinubu. Joining us live in the studios here in Lagos, we have political analyst and, of course, one who is very, very interested in seeing democracy grow. We have Mr. Jide Johnson joining us live. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
And also in Abuja, we also have a senior advocate of Nigeria who also joins us in our Abuja studio. We have Mr. Jibrin Okutekpa. Thank you so much for being with us.
And
all right, from there, let's head straight to Borno State. Before we begin this conversation, we do have our correspondent who is live. Don't forget, there is indeed a national protest. Well, let's see what he has in store for us. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
A very good morning and happy Democracy Day to all.
Happy Democracy Day, Markirawa. Where are you and what is the situation like in terms of the celebration of the marking of Democracy Day?
Well, I am in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, a place that used to be the epicenter of the Boko Haram insurgency that has bedeviled people of the state for years now, and people are still counting, although there are similitude of peace in larger parts of the state, but yes, there are still teaching problems with regard to the level of insecurity. 42 peoples are still in abduction, talking about that of Musa in Askira Uba local government area of Borno State. But largely, it's a peaceful one in Maiduguri. Everybody is going about its normal day-to-day activities. But, you know, the years of insurgency has affected the people, leading to the Global Terrorism Index enlisting Nigeria as third most terrorized country on earth. But we've learned that it has now changed. We are now the fourth most terrorized country on earth. But largely in Borno State, communities are recovering from the years of insurgency. Peace is taking root. Some of the community members have been resettled. Some refugees have been repatriated from Cameroon, Minawao camp, and other parts of the Lake Chad region. But we have some residents with us here who will
unfortunately, Marukirawa, we cannot take the feedback from the residents. We apologize for that. But in our subsequent bulletins, we will do that. We do have to come back into the studio. Thank you very much, Marukirawa, for joining us this morning. We bring the conversation back into the studio. Let's get reactions from Mr. Jide Johnson regarding Nigeria's democracy. How are we faring? Are you excited by the speech? And does it inspire hope and promise?
Well, there's an aspect of this speech that drives home, which is the recognition of the role that journalists play for the restoration of democratic, and it's personal because my former boss and the former editor of the Punch newspaper, Barrister Agbemi Gogunle, was part of those that was duly recognized for his contribution, and others. The list cannot be mutually exclusive and cannot be mutually exhaustive. At least it's a starting point. You can't take away the role of journalism in Nigerians' independence. That's why people like Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, all newspaper, they were journalists. Antonio, they were all journalists. And then you drive it home to June 12th, the role that journalists play. I think that particular aspect is a welcome development.
I smiled when he said that.
But the reality on ground with respect to democratic institutions, with respect to the security challenges that we have, is a rude awakening to the challenges that we still have 32 years after June 12, can we talk about having the democratic institution that can institute a free and fair election in 2027? That begs a lot of questions.
Wow. Okay, let's also take to our guests in our Abuja studio. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, sir. And let's get your own thoughts as well regarding the speech, Mr. Okutekpa. There were lots of things that the president said. Security was a big point of concern. He did highlight where we are and what is being done, employing 50,000 police officers and more. Talked about the budget, the highest allocation in our budget to defense. Were you inspired by how we've come or how far we've come as explained by the president?
Unfortunately, I didn't listen to Mr. President's speech, so it will be difficult for me to comment on what I didn't hear.
All right.
But the question of 15,000 or also number of policemen, I have not seen improvement in security architecture of this country. All of us are aware that on daily basis, our freedom from fear is in jeopardy. We are all in a very dire security situation. I think the government needs to do more than reeling out the statistics of the number of security agencies or police that they intend to employ. Because the role of government is to secure the liberties and lives of the citizens. But today, I think we are in a very precarious situation in this country. And I think the president needs to do more than the speech making. We want practical enforceability of law and order in all parts of this country, because it appears to me that we seem to have two sets of governments, the legitimate government and the illegitimate governments that are operating from the bush and sometimes coming to the town to kidnap. So the government needs to do more, in my view.
Now, staying with you briefly, Mr. Okutekpa, before we return to our studio in Lagos, the judiciary has always been seen as the last hope of a common man, but that's question or that statement, the jury is out on that the current judiciary in Nigeria is almost competing with INEC in declaring who wins elections. And how do we make our judiciary more responsive to the yearnings and aspirations of the majority of Nigeria and restore confidence in the Nigerian judiciary?
Well, like I have always said, the role of judiciary in democratic process cannot be overemphasized. And I think that it's in consonance with that role that the Nigerian Constitution assigns specifically to the judiciary the role of adjudication. As to whether or not the judiciary has lived up to the expectation of Nigerians is an issue that many Nigerians will answer the question in the negative. But there are so many militating factors against the Nigerian judiciary performing optimally. If you go memory lane, our judiciary seems to be more effective and efficient under the military regime. They were bold, they were courageous, they were not intimidated by state captured. But today, it appears to me that every institution of democracy has been captured by the power that be. And that worries me, and it should worry many reasonable Nigerians. We expect the Nigerian judiciary to hold the political actors accountable. But in most cases, you seem to see roadblocks being put on the way to attainment of electoral justice. And so that emboldens Nigerian politicians to become more daring, more autocratic. Indeed, the politician seems to believe that they can have their ways, haven't forced themselves on us, and that's why the popular slogan, go to court. So I think in 2027 or 2026, 27, the judiciary need to have a rethink. I'm not saying that the judiciary, all members of judiciary are bad, but there is a perception that we cannot run away from it. That perception is that justice is no longer obtainable in our courts, and judiciary appears not to be the hope of the common man anymore. So the judiciary needs to do more. The legal profession too needs to do more. We seem to dwell more on technical justice than substantial justice. And where technical justice is elevated over and above substantial justice, democracy certainly will suffer a shipwreck. And I think it will be in the best interest of all of us to allow democracy to flourish. I do not see us operating democracy, in my view, the way democracy is known, because it appears to me that sovereignty does not belong to Nigerian people. Sovereignty resides in he who has money, the money bags, those who control the apparatus of the state. And so we don't seem to have holistic, independent institutions that have the power to hold people accountable. And the reason is very simple. Those who are supposed to execute the law, are enforcing the law, are the judicial arm, the executive arm of government. And when people act in sabotage of the Constitution and the executive closes his eye to it, then you see worse things happen in our society. And so, permit me the use of ecclesiastical word, we all need to be born again in terms of our respect for law, in terms of our respect for the rule of law. We don't seem to have rule of law in this country. I think it's the rule of convenience that we operate, not the rule of law, in my view.
All right. Thank you very much for that, standpoint. I don't know that we have more time. I would have loved for us, to still touch on certain aspects regarding what's happened, particularly the role of INEC, because the president did mention a statement regarding trust in INEC. If you can, please, I just have to, let's come back into the studio. If you can, as quickly as possible, talk about
the interesting thing about the INEC chairman is that we are speaking about June 12th today, making reference to what happened. And we say history is the rewarder of good conduct and bad conduct. And fortunately for the INEC chairman, his name is in my dialect, is in my language, Amokwiton. I hope it will be a reference point for positive outcome in the future or for negative outcome in the future.
Is that the meaning of the name?
Amokwiton, yeah, someone that, so that's the literal translation of I hope they will use his name to tell good story and not negative story. Learning from what we are saying about June 12th and the conduct of offering Osu, I hope it will not make the mistake that was made concerning the off-cycle election in Imo State and in Kogi State, whereby some local government returned 98% when the actual voters turnout, the average of voters turnout was 23%. So I hope everyone if patosha. That's just my advice.
Finally, before we wrap up, and still talking, so that there's an INEC issue there, and there's also the entire political class. We've just seen primaries and the conduct of even opposition parties. You've seen geometric counting, we've seen screenings at midnight, we've seen money politics and all of it. How can we make, because it seems there's a Nigerian version of democracy, how can we make democracy truly work for us and not the political and elite class? And beyond the go get your PVCs, because it's almost, it's since 1999, it's 27 years.
Everything rests on the party system. And the foundation of representative democracy is the party system. And we talk about June 12th. The June 12th process started with the primaries at the ward level, the option A4. It was transparent. We knew who won the primaries at the local government, at the world level.
But
who won the parties? Who won the primaries of this election? Who won the primaries of this? Nobody knew who has won the primaries. It is left for the National Working Committee of the party to release the list. And so, for us to think that we have a semblance of what we have in June 12, in 2027, we are all living in fool's paradise, if you are thinking so, because the foundation itself is faulty. The party primaries are nothing to write home about. The opposition, the ruling party, and everything is collapsed. And like my big brother said, it's not based on the rule of law, it's based on the rule of the thumb. You know the rule of the thumb is what happened in the Colosseum. So it is based on the whims and the caprices of the emperor.
Of Caesar.
Of the emperor. In this case, we have his emperor. So I've said that we shouldn't call them His Excellency, we should call them His Imperial Majesty, because everything has been captured by those that have the apparatus of the state.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you. We're out of time. We need to head out of the studio, but the conversations continue all through the day. We're going to be looking at Nigeria's democracy, how far we've come. And also, we'll be bringing you updates from the Oyo town hall as well. It happened, of course, yesterday. We're sharing some updates with you on that. And over the course of the day, just join our correspondents around the country. Thank you for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. We'll see you again. I am Olive Emode.
Happy Democracy Day.
And I'm Joe Hansen. We'll see you again on Monday. But stay, just stick around. We have more.